And right now we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld taking you through to that closing bell with the global simulcast. We're joined now by Massar and Tim Stenovec from the radio room. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, including our partnership with YouTube. A decidedly down day. Stocks at session lows right now as we get just less than 2 minutes to those bells. And Massar, we're going to close below some key moving averages unless something turns around in the next minute and a half.
I heard you talking about the 50-day on the S&P 500 and the significance of that. And so, yeah, you wonder if you're a technician, you're thinking, okay, if we break these levels, does that mean we go another leg down? Or do, buyers come in because it hit a certain downward point? So we'll have to see, but you're definitely seeing that selling into the close, and it does feel a little bit negative here.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just interesting to look at the biggest movers in the S&P 500 on a percentage basis today. I mean, at the bottom of the pack, you have those companies that have benefited so much from the rise in energy demand and the rise in data center demand, taking a real hit today. So it's not just the mega cap tech stocks, but it's also the sort of tertiary ones that are connected to the AI trade too.
Though old school energy stocks certainly higher today. I'm sure we'll talk about what's going on with oil. We've been talking about it on the close, how you think about the risk-off day that we're having. Okay, gold is getting a bid, but the bond market not really acting as the haven that you might expect it to. So a lot of pain certainly being felt today across asset classes.
And I just want to point out, too, we are waiting later tonight, of course, that speech by President Trump at 9 p.m. Washington time. He's currently speaking to reporters right now. And his words, the message this evening is our country will be strong. Of course, the implications for what he says may not have an immediate market reaction, but certainly when it comes to policy and the potential economic fundamentals, it certainly could. Right across the screen here on this Wednesday afternoon, the Dow Jones Industrial Average down more than 200 points or 0.5%. The S&P down 79 points or 1.2%. The Nasdaq Composite down about 400 points or 1.8%. The Nasdaq 100 down 1.9, just barely touching that 100-day moving average. The S&P closing firmly below that 50-day moving average, and the Russell 2000, that was also lower, 22 points or about 1.1%.
All right, so that's your major averages. We've been talking about this all day. Maybe you guys have too, but the S&P 500, you go in though, and you see almost an even split between winners and losers. 257 names in the S&P 500 gaining ground today, Katie. 244 to the downside, 2 unchanged.
It's slightly uglier if you take a look at the circle, which shows us what the sectors did today. Certainly, that doesn't look too great. In terms of what did outperform today, as I mentioned, energy as a sector higher by about 2.2%. We did see a rebound in oil. We are watching the geopolitical environment. Tech having a terrible day, off by about 2% as a sector.
Well, speaking of tech, a lot of focus on the AI trade, and one of the biggest memory chip makers out there, Micron, reporting earnings right now. The shares, the knee-jerk reaction to the upside here, as the company said EPS came in at $4.78. That's a big beat. The street was looking on average for $3.95. Revenue in the quarter on an adjusted basis, $13.64 billion. The street was looking for roughly about $13 billion even. So a beat on that. Operating income, a beat as well. Cash flow from operations, a massive beat, $8.4 billion. The street was looking for $6 billion. And the guidance going forward, the company says that for the current fiscal quarter, the second quarter, adjusted revenue, $18.3 to $19.1 billion. The street was looking for $14 billion.
All right, so this is an important one. I mean, this stock's up 169% year to date. It's down about 14% from an all-time high back on December 10th. But this is an important indicator. This is a dynamic random access memory company, but it's also going to give us some indications into also the AI trade that we've all been seeing under pressure as of late. So maybe some confirmation. Keep in mind, this plays into a lot of different markets, but it also plays into the market for AI servers. So to see that upbeat, we want to know the breakdown in terms of its markets to get an idea of what it says, again, on the AI trade.
I just want to put out, too, some more headlines coming out, Carol. The adjusted EPS figure that they're giving, the guidance for the current quarter, basically $8.62 at the top end. The street was looking for $4.71. So you're talking about basically estimates coming in at almost double what the street was looking for. It's also saying that its gross margin is going to expand to 67 to 69%. That gross margin right now tracking less than 60, but right now in the mid-50s.
Yeah, what a world. I mean, margins in in the high 60% range. Hey, Sanjay Mehrotra, the chairman, president, and CEO of Micron Technology, out in a statement where we're getting a little more color on how the company is thinking and positioning itself right now. He said that Micron's technology leadership, differentiated product portfolio, and strong operational execution position Micron as an essential AI enabler. He said, quote, "We are investing to support our customers' growing need for memory and storage."
I do want to go back to those forecasts. That is the red headline across the terminal right now. Second quarter adjusted revenue coming in at $18.3 billion to $19.1 billion. That's the guidance there. The estimate had been for $14.38 billion. As Romaine said, adjusted EPS, that second quarter estimate, also much higher than expectations. We were actually having a conversation with Matt Bryson over at Wedbush, and he said that, built into some of his forecasts was the expectation that management was going to be a little bit conservative with their guide, but taking a look at some of these numbers, so exceeding these forecasts, not seeing that conservativeness come through necessarily.
Yeah, and just like the headline on the press release, AI demand acceleration, along with other things, but they talk about it, driving record fiscal first quarter results, including highest ever free cash flow. Again, shares of Micron bouncing around, but mostly higher. The stock right now up about 4.5% here in the aftermarket. What?
And we were talking, you mentioned the fact that this is a stock that basically has almost tripled on a year-to-date basis, could potentially triple. But I was looking at some of the biggest winners on a year-to-date basis in the S&P 500. If you had ran this chart, the function on your terminal a few months ago, all the names would have been the bigger chip makers, the Nvidias, the Broadcoms of the world. At the top of that list now, it's a SanDisk, it's a Western Digital, it's a Seagate, it's a Micron. Basically, 4 of the top 5 names in the S&P 500 on a year-to-date basis are memory makers, Carol Massar.
Which is fascinating, right?
Yeah, well, all that data has got to be memorized somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Nice.
You don't want it to forget it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I want ChatGPT to remember everything about me.
Can someone install one of those Micron chips in my brain?
It's
That's I forget a lot.
Don't worry.
All right, we're going to watch for some more headlines on Micron. Right now, it's up more than 6% here in the aftermarket. Let me go to some of the gainers in today's session. Got to talk about an IPO today. It's been a pretty good year for IPOs in 2025. Medline, maker and distributor of medical supplies, gloves, gowns, exam tables, all those things we love that are used by hospitals and doctors, making its public debut today, oversubscribed, raising $6.25 billion, year's biggest initial public offering. You can see that stock finishing the day up 41%. So many would say interest certainly among investors and maybe priced really well.
We have one of their gowns at home, by the way.
Do you like to wear those gowns at home?
Well, yeah, I was very comfortable, and we asked the hospital, could we take it? And they were like, sure.
They are kind of comfy, aren't they?
They are.
All right, good to know about.
Not very stylish, but comfy.
I'm trying to get my head around you wearing them at home.
I think they make the classic swab.
And I wear the little booty socks,
right?
with the little skid things on, so I don't slip.
Oh,
yeah.
Who doesn't love those?
Yeah.
Right? You don't fall down the stairs. You don't slide on the floor. All right, let's go to another gainer, Texas Pacific Land Corp. TPL is the ticker. This one finishing the day up about 7.6%. Company announced a strategic agreement with Bolt Data and Energy. They're going to develop large-scale data center campuses across TPL's West Texas land holdings, with TPL investing $50 million in Bolt as part of the deal. So we saw some momentum there. And then Udemy, check this out, guys, up more than 33% at its highs today, intraday, finishing with about a 13% gain here at the close on a deal with peer Coursera to merge the two companies in an all-stock transaction. The combined entity with an implied equity value of about $2.5 billion. So Udemy, definitely an outperformer.
All right.
Today's session.
You got the outperformers.
Don't you like to say Udemy? Don't you like to say Udemy?
Udemy.
I like Udemy. Udemy. It's like my jersey comes out. Katie, your jersey comes out.
Exactly. You read me.
Let's talk about some of the decliners today. Stocks in the red include Nvidia, down 3.8%. This was the biggest decliner on a points basis in the S&P 500, responsible for 19 points to the downside in the S&P 500 today. That tech rout hitting stocks amid skepticism about the AI trade. Nvidia leading mega cap stocks lower today. Broadcom also fell by 4.5%. Tesla down by 4.6%. Nvidia down close to 17% from that October all-time high. So quite a decline in a short time. Shares of Oracle also taking a hit today. Speaking of the AI trade, down 5.4% on the day. This after it was confirmed that Blue Owl Capital is not contributing equity to a data center project in Michigan. That project progressing with Blackstone in talks to provide equity capital, and Bank of America leading a debt deal to help finance the project. Also watching the cost of protecting Oracle's debt against default. That was on track earlier to reach its highest closing level going back to 2009. And finally, GE Vernova shares taking a hit. Weakness in AI-related stocks certainly on my radar today. GE Vernova down 10.5% today. The concern was that the weakness in AI-linked stocks spread to companies that are expected to benefit from electricity demand. So GE Vernova fell along with Caterpillar. Makers of data center products and power equipment also fell, and those companies too involved in building power and data center infrastructure also taking a hit today.
All right, take a look at yields. A mixed day there. Here, you had some comments earlier in the day by Christopher Waller that did move the market, but some of those moves really kind of reversed or at least settled down just a little bit. Slightly lower on the longer end of the curve and slightly higher on the shorter end of the curve, excuse me, and slightly higher on the long end of the curve. The net effect of it all is basically where we've been now for the last couple of sessions.
All right, guys, as we wrap our cross-platform coverage, just want to mention Micron still up now about 7.3% here in the aftermarket.